Greetings all! Today, we will be examining the relatively uncommon Psychic Fairy-type Pokemon Mime Jr, the Mime Pokémon, and its uncommon evolution Mr. Mime, the Barrier Pokémon. While they might be a bit unnerving to some, the members of the Mime Jr family are easygoing creatures that can be both incredibly fun to be around and a pain in the rear to handle in a fight. Mime Jr are bipedal humanoid creatures with a dark blue lower torso adorned with a single pair of tiny, stumpy legs, while their belly region, upper torso, and head are coated in pink flesh. Their pink arms are long and very thin in form, and they possess a button-like orange growth on their belly, which matches the color and form of the round nose that sits above their mouth. Their eyes are a dark black color with white pupils, and their head is adorned with a dark blue, fleshy growth of skin that twists and zigzags upward, ending in a white, pom-pom-like growth of fleshy material believed to be the disguised extrasensory organ from which their psychic-type powers emanate. Their evolved form, Mr. Mime, are much more humanoid in form, though this seems to be the product of convergent evolution rather than them being closely related to humans. Their limbs and face have pink flesh, while their torso is white, adorned with a massive red patch of skin in the center. Their limbs are connected to their torso by red outgrowths at their shoulders and hips, and while their knees are white in color and their feet hidden in dark blue fleshy sheaths that resemble shoes with curled toes, their hands are coated in a similar fleshy sheath that is white in color, further possessing 5 articulate fingers with red pads on their fingertips. They possess brightly colored red cheeks on the sides of their mouth, and they further possess a pair of dark blue, horn-like growths on their head that serve as organic containers for their extrasensory organ system. The members of the Mime Jr family are incredibly odd creatures, even for psychic and fairy types, and while there are many aspects that attest to their abnormal attributes, the most interesting aspect of note is that, surprisingly, the powers they are the most well known for were not originally part of their mannerisms and behavior. Historical records indicate that at one time in the past, in particular in places like the Kalos region where they were once completely isolated to, these creatures were completely defenseless and were on the verge of extinction because they were not only too kind-hearted to offensively use their psychic powers on others, but they also lacked the ability to produce a normal cry due to a genetic defect that damaged the structure of their larynx. Though most people did not care for them much anyways because of their abnormal appearance, mimes in their regions of origin took pity on the speechless creatures and took them under their care, training them in the ways of pantomime. Once nameless, these creatures quickly adapted these new skills into their behavior and powers, and became so gifted in the art that they were given the monikers Mime Jr and Mr. Mime by onlookers and trainers, and over time, these creatures took to the nicknames so much that they adapted them to create a learned cry for themselves, leaving the names to stick as their species names. It only took 3 generations for these beasts to psychically ingrain their mimicry skills into their form and have in time learned how to incorporate their psychic powers into their acts, granting them a powerful tool for performances and combat that other people and Pokemon could never truly match. As such, these creatures specialize more in defensive and support attributes than outright offensive combat, particularly in the creation of barriers, and they take their pantomime very seriously. While Mime Jr might not mind it so much, if Mr. Mime are interrupted during one of their performances, or their audience does not seem too impressed with them, they will use their broad hands to deliver painful double slap attacks to the offending party until they either apologize or have seemingly learned their lesson. Because their primary defensive attributes are seated around the creation of barriers that can block out different types of moves, these creatures naturally acquire the soundproof and filter abilities as base abilities, while their expertise in relying on weaker basic attacks to fight off the few that can get past their barriers can grant them the technician ability as a hidden ability. In terms of their stats, in the case of Mr. Mime, Their penchant for quickly using barriers and basic psychic attacks to block energy-based attacks is reflected duly in their stats, as while at least half of their base stats are below average for a fully evolved Psychic or Fairy-type Pokemon, their base special attack stat is above average for a fully evolved Fairy-type Pokemon, and their base special defense and speed stats are above average for a fully evolved Pokemon of both of their types. They might not look that imposing, but Mr. Mime are deceptively powerful creatures that can more than make the opposition work to deal any serious damage, if they can even get past their barriers in the first place. Mime Jr. are actually the result of a mutation of developing Mr. Mime from the presence of specific chemical odors. These days, these specific chemical odors are packaged and sold as odd incense, which must be held by the reproducing parent Mr. Mime for a Mime Jr. to be produced. Unlike most infant Pokemon, however, Mime Jr. actually retain the ability to learn most of the moves that come naturally to their evolved form, and are thus only weaker in the sense that they miss out on a few moves and have weaker stats as a whole. At the very least, though, their playful personalities grant them access to the tickle technique at birth, which their evolved form cannot normally learn at all. In this state, these creatures do not possess the perfect mimicry skills of Mr. Mime, and mainly rely on their copycat technique to disrupt the opposition. These creatures will generally try to use this move to mimic the moves and mannerisms of their opposition in order to startle or confuse them. Instead of fighting, though, if they feel there's enough time to do so, and their opponent is so distracted that they can't take their eyes off of Mime Jr., these creatures will make themselves scarce and run away while the opposition is still confused. Despite their somewhat cowardly nature in combat, these little creatures love to be around people, so they can actively practice their miming skills. And they technically need it, as their underdeveloped brain lacks the ability to readily produce and understand emotions and the expressions and motions that come with them, making them akin to blank slates. Mimicking others, in turn, allows them to develop and understand emotions and incorporate them into their behavior. Unfortunately for these creatures, they still have much to learn in this state, as while they can maintain their mimicry to a decent degree, if they find that their target is surprised by their actions and skills, these creatures will become so happy that they will forget that they were imitating anything to begin with, breaking their concentration completely. It is only when they master their mimicry skills and acquire the mimic technique that their psychic powers will fully kick in and facilitate brain development, leading them to evolve into Mr. Mime. When Mr. Mime evolve from Mime Jr., or otherwise reach the point in their life where they master their mimic technique, it not only provides them the chance to learn the odd Psywave attack, but also further facilitates their ability to utilize the one skill that truly makes them stand out from other Pokemon of their type: the power to create invisible walls. As it turns out, Mr. Mime are masters of aerokinesis, and are able to use their psychic powers to vibrate their fingertips and emanate a repulsing energy force that results in the motion of molecules in the air slowing down so much that they barely move, resulting in the contained creation of a literal wall of air. While these walls are completely invisible in form, and may not seem like they exist at all, as Mr. Mime will create them using the same pantomime they use in their regular miming performances, they are very much real, and are so sturdy that almost nothing is capable of penetrating them with ease. The only thing that can cause the wall to dissipate is if the Mr. Mime that created it moves out of the range at which its psychic power can extend. But this range and the overall durability of the walls increases as they practice and develop their psychic powers over time. Aside from granting them access to the barrier technique at birth, this more advanced power allows these creatures to learn the quick guard and wide guard techniques, which are not accessible by Mime Jr., and their advanced psychic and fairy type powers further enable them to learn the guard swap, power swap, misty terrain, and magical leaf moves. While Mr. Mime are generally very kind and agreeable, they also have a wicked sense of humor and will gladly con people into thinking that they are just miming before enticing them to come towards them, only for the audience to discover a hidden wall in front of them, usually too late for them to stop before hitting it bluntly. This has a habit of irritating others, but Mr. Mime only ever do this out of fun, and never mean any ill will towards others. As such, these creatures can be very readily trained by just about anyone, and can definitely make themselves a nuisance, keeping the opposition guessing as to where the next barrier might be that they have to get around, with no idea as to where said barrier even is initially. Though their uncanny, human-like forms might be off-putting and perhaps even creepy to some, the members of the Mime Jr. family are fun and lovable creatures that can definitely make things difficult for opponents that can't get past their barriers. They might not always like to battle, preferring a quieter life of enjoyment and performance instead, but that does little to take away from what they are capable of if given the chance to show their skills. If you wish to acquire one of these mimes and happen to come across one in the wild though, you would be best served by keeping an eye on where they move their hands. They might try to entice you to come and chase them, but if you're not paying attention to where you're going, you may only end up breaking your face if you accidentally plow into a wall in your pursuit. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always an honor to be able to speak with you all on the subject of Pokemon in a way that brings me great joy and happiness in my work. If you would like to keep tabs on past and future work, click that subscribe button, check out my work on DeviantArt, and don't be shy about following me on Twitter, where you can find pertinent announcements on upcoming work before it is officially posted. Links to both can be found in the video description. If you would like to support my work and help Miguel and I continue to produce more content for you and improve upon our presentation, please visit us at my Patreon page, which you can also find a link to in the video description. With that, I thank you for watching and I wish you well.